Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here on this panel today. My name is Taz. I'm a artist, activist, podcaster, writer. I do a lot of things, and I'm really excited to be a part of this panel. I've been part of the visual communications community for a while. Our podcast is actually recorded in the podcast studio at Visual Communications, Good Muslim, Bad Muslim. Happy Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which is May. I know it's hard to know how time works in the pandemic, but we are in May. It is our month. And welcome to the first ever Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival Virtual Showcase presented by Visual Communications. From celebrating our histories and cultures to mobilizing our communities to be socially and politically active, we present the virtual showcase to keep us connected. The showcase is brought to you by our partners, Comcast, NBC Universal, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Nielsen, HBO and Warner Media, National Geographic. And for more information, please visit vcmedia.org. We'd also like to thank our community partners for this program. Thank you to our friends Asian Highway, South Asians in Entertainment, and South Asian Women in Entertainment. I'm so excited for this panel. I've known a few of them for a very long time. So let's go ahead and meet them. I'm going to read their bios, and then we're going to just jump into a conversation. And I hope everyone got a chance to also check out their short films that were part of the series earlier. First, we have Leena Penderkar, who is an award-winning filmmaker. She wrote and directed Awaken. Her feature film, 20 Weeks, was selected as one of the best indie films of 2017 by Film Threat. Leena has also directed several short films, including Dandekar Makes a Sandwich, which won the Grand Jury Prize at the Indian Film Festival of LA. Leena is currently the CBS Diverse Directors Program and recently in the NBC Emerging Directors and Sony Television Directors Program. Next, we have Fazia Mirza, who is a writer, creator, director behind I Know Her. Fazia was named a White House Champion of Change in Asian American art and storytelling, the same time I was. So that's how we met. And listed as one of Independent Magazine's 10 filmmaker to watch and IndieWire's top 10 creatives. Her first feature, Signature Moves, screened at 150 film festivals globally and won 14 awards. She also wrote on the CBS series The Red Line, executive produced by Greg Berlanti and Ava DuVernay. She's currently working on several TV and film projects, which I'm very excited to talk about. Next, we have Shilpi Roy, who is a writer and director of Stalled. She's a filmmaker who comes from a traditionally Indian family and grew up watching only the song and dance numbers from Bollywood movies. She created the award-winning comedy web series Hipsterhood. Shilpi sold her first television show, Brown Girls, to Freeform TV, and she currently writes on the Netflix original series Team Kaylee and is developing a show for the Disney Channel with Lily Singh's company, Unicorn Island. And last but not least, we have Pia Shah, an American actress, writer, and producer of Indian descent. She most recently starred opposite of Alfred Molina in Florian Zeller's Tony Award-winning play, The Father. She plays Jinky in the indie feature film Grass, which is currently on Netflix. She is the writer and producer of The Shower, which is directed by Mahesh Paler. The screening is actually the world premiere of the film. We're very excited. I hope everyone got a chance to see this world premiere of this film. Great, let's go ahead and get started on our conversation. We're going to talk for maybe about 30 minutes, and then if you do have questions, we will be taking questions. Just drop it in the chats and in the comment sections of wherever you're watching this, because I know we're on Facebook, YouTube, we're in a bunch of places. So drop your questions if you have any. Hi, y'all. How's it going? How's this moment treating everyone? I'll just open a big question. How's it going being a creative that's stuck at home in this pandemic? Free for all.
I think, relatively speaking, I'm doing well, all things considered. I think everyone else may have to unmute.
I'm trying to get things done. You may see my 5-year-old running in and out because she has requests every 5 minutes, but that's pretty much how my day goes. So yeah, surviving.
Surviving. I think I've been going through phases. I don't know if anyone's seen that Britney Spears meme, but I was just like, I got this in the beginning. I was like, I'm going on a 5-mile walk every day. And then I was like, I'm going to eat Doritos all day. And then I was like, I will emerge as and then, you know, my family is back east, New Jersey. That's a very different situation in New York, New Jersey. There's like, the whole country is having their own experience depending on where they are right now. And, I just, thank you for asking that. I just want to acknowledge it, that this is a weird and sad and devastating time for pretty much everybody around the world in one way or another. And I honestly, like, I didn't believe it in the beginning when they said, like, you will know someone who passes away, but it has started to happen, unfortunately, to our close friends and family. And my mom is boarding a flight right now from Mumbai to here after being on lockdown for 2.5 months. So it's very real. And I was kind of like, what are we doing? We're having this Zoom call today. Like, are we pretending like this isn't happening? Like, but it is happening. So I'll stop rambling. But thank you for asking that, because I think the creatives, you know, and if you have a kid, like, forget about it. Like Lena knows, it's just, there is no childcare right now. We are not playing video games all day like you lucky child-free people who are eating mac and cheese and like on your Nintendo Switches. Just FYI. I tried to get a Switch, but the Switches are sold out. So.
They're sold out. They're very expensive too if you do find it.
I do want to say I don't have a Switch and I don't play video games all day, but I support those who do.
But I never have, just FYI.
Yeah, no, I wish I did. But also, you know, I just want to say, you know, I think there's a sense of, you know, movement forward and action and doing that can help us normalize and feel grounded even during times of trauma and crisis. And so I think, you know, it's important, you know, to acknowledge all sides. And, you know, I think we're really lucky to be even in homes or spaces where we are safe enough to have the technology to do this. And, you know, there's a lot of people who don't have what we have even in this moment. So as hard as it is, there's, you know, we're really fortunate.
So fortunate. And I think it's one of the weird things about this moment is that, back to the visual communications, the film festival, it was before, you know, all these movies were only if you were in LA and only if you were able to get a ticket. So we're this whole moving to the internet has made a lot of the creations that we've been making a little bit more accessible, which has been a lot of fun to take in media at this time. I consume a lot of media, but that's been great. I had questions for each of you, and then I was going to go to a more general question. But I wanted to, let's start off with Lena. Your film Awaken was great. You had the amazing Parminder in it, which I was just like, what? Where does she come from? That was exciting. I'm very, you know, I'm of the generation that finds a lot of nostalgia in that. And I just thought that, like, it was so tender, a little dystopian too, the ending. I just think it was just like you were able to talk about this character whose mother is suffering from Alzheimer and how she's dealing with that very eloquently. And it's not a story we get to watch very often. So, and I know in the past you've done, you touch upon these very like human stories. In 20 Weeks, you talk about a couple that's going through pregnancy, and you know, like these are just like stories we don't usually hear. And I wanted to ask what your inspiration was for this narrative.
My inspiration often comes from real life, and my mother-in-law has Alzheimer's. So, you know, the story came from just a feeling of, I wanted it to be more of an ethereal piece about the feeling of trying to caregive. And, you know, a lot of these things, I've seen a lot of people with Alzheimer's, especially in the South Asian community, and it's just not something we talk about or even acknowledge. It's really, it's almost like a taboo topic, but it's hard to, I think it's very difficult, especially for people our age who are juggling multiple layers of things. And there is a point when you have someone in your life who's terminally ill where you don't there's not an easy answer of what you can do, you know, where, and that's kind of where I often find myself with my filmmaking and writing, is these areas where you just don't really have an answer. And, you know, that's a lot of times where I land with this. So I was lucky to be able to work with Parminder and an incredible cast and crew. So yeah.
Yeah, it did feel very ethereal, that word that you mentioned. Like, it just had this very surreal quality. It was great. Pia, my next question is for you. It was just so great to see you and Emily on screen again. I feel like you two have, am I wrong in the assessment that like you do a lot of, you've done multiple projects together, right?
We've actually only worked together once. I hope I'm not wrong. On Grass, you know, and that was directed by Tanaj Chopra, and it was just the two of us, except for Anthony Ma on a few days, but it was a very intensive experience. That was in 2012, and we became very good friends after that, and kind of there was a shorthand because of that prior experience. And I wanted to be able to have something that was scripted, but that was also loose enough that we could bring in our knowledge of the story of each other and of all the conversations that we had while we were prepping for the film. It came about in the most magical way because I was 7 months pregnant. My agent reached out to me, said there was a manager who was interested in meeting me, which is very unusual when I'm 7 months pregnant to be going out on this meeting. And he happened to ask me if I had anything that I wanted to make. And I've had these ideas percolating in me for years and years. I was obsessed with whether or not I was going to have a kid. I don't know why. I think I was just like, if an actor does this, how do they do it without full-time childcare, which I'm learning now how that happens in this pandemic. And so, you know, I wanted to make it while I was pregnant. I had a very clear deadline because of that. So I was like 8.5 months pregnant when we made it. I had worked with Mahesh Pailur before, and he had directed me in The Layover. So I knew he was able to work quickly and very nimbly with a bare bones crew. There was no budget on this, and we shot it very fluidly in one day in my apartment. And yeah, I was very, very fortunate to have a lot of people who were able to just come in and do me a huge solid, basically, and, you know, pulled favors from everyone to make it. So
that must have written it in like a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it was a very fast process, but I think because these questions had been inside of me for so long, about 10 years ago, my best friend had a baby, and I was weirdly devastated by it because I really hope she's not watching. She knows she's the best. But I was that person who was like, oh my God, everything's going to change and I'm losing you. And I'm losing, you know, a version of you because there's no way that we can go through this together, no matter how close you are. It's like having a child is a personal experience that only you can really know what it is, and you can't know it until it happens. And so I was the Emily character in that situation, and it had been in me for so long that I kind of needed to make it before the baby came. So it was like this cathartic experience. I could just get it out and then move on with my life.
It was really well done, and I really liked how, like, I guess it wasn't really a twist at the end, but you know, I just really like how you were able to make Emily's story kind of just subtly. I guess it is. I won't spoil it. Y'all should go watch it if it's still up. I think that all the films ended being up at 5 o'clock today, so maybe you won't be able to watch it until it's moving on to other places. But it was just really well done.
Thank you.
And Fazia, I feel like we saw each other the day you filmed your piece. Fazia comes in and was just like, oh, I just filmed this little thing. I was just like, oh. And then now I watched it and it's great. I didn't know that's what you were doing before we ate lunch or whatever that meal was that day.
We totally did. We met at I was like, hey, I can meet you after this thing. And you're like, cool, where are you? And I gave you my coordinates. You're like, oh, there's a diner I like there. And then I just like was rolling my, bag down the street, and we had a lovely lunch. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think part of what made it feel that way was, I'm somebody who loves to, I'm like, we need to make something. Like, how can we, I think the beauty of sort of being in, when you're in Los Angeles and sort of being part of that industry, is there's so much opportunity. Also, what comes with that opportunity is that it takes a lot longer to create. And so when you're come from an indie creator background where you're like, yeah, I shot this thing and then we made it. Now it's out there for the world. Like, we just like get it. It's like getting a snack out of a vending machine versus something that you've been planning for. It's not a 12-course meal, and so I was wanting to make a thing. And also one of the programmers at the Outfest Film Festival in LA, who, the festival's been really good to me and programmed my work before really anybody cared about queer Muslim stories, queer Muslim South Asian stories. But like, he's like, look, if you get me a film, like, maybe do you have something we can put it in? And so I was like, hey dude, I have something. And also it was a really tight little group. There was just 3 of us working on the film. And so, and it just was so efficient, as women do. And so it didn't have the weight, I guess, that sometimes we carry or have after this big thing. And I feel really grateful to Lisa, who was the DP, and gaffer and editor, and Lisa Tom, and then Kausar, who starred in it, and he's just an exceptional actor and improviser.
Yeah, Kausar is awesome. I love how she's just kind of like showing up all over the place. And what I wanted to ask you, Fazia, is that like for you, like came into LA and you're doing like a gazillion projects at the same time. You got a bunch of projects. Like, I think I really relate to this DIY that you have about like, okay, let's just make stuff. Let's not wait around for permission to make stuff. So how do you have the energy to, I mean, it's kind of a vague question, but how do you have the energy to keep all these stories going, and how do you motivate yourself?
I honestly have no idea some days. I think part of it is making up for lost time. And I think part of it is that I think I found the work ethic that I didn't have before. Before I was like, I put all the work ethic into hanging out and partying. And so I feel like I found the thing that really motivated me later in life. And I feel very much driven by, if not now, when. And also I feel like I sacrificed a lot to sort of be who I am and be where I'm at, whether it's being queer and coming out as queer, and, or leaving a law career, which I had. I was a lawyer for a while, and putting all that aside and being like, I'm going to be an actor, writer, creator on a lawyer's debt. Like, that makes sense. And so I just feel like, what was the point of doing any of that if I'm not just going to be and do all of this with force and ferocity and all the passion in my life? There's no point in doing it halfway. And I'm motivated by the people I'm around. I mean, Taz, you're such a, great leader in the community, and someone that I feel excited that I've gotten to get to know more in the last few years. And, you're driven and motivating. And, I'm driven by my partner who runs a film festival. I'm motivated by her. I'm motivated by, all these creators. Like, that drives me to do more. And I think if we don't do it, who will? And the who will is what terrifies me too. So I'm like, we got to do it.
Yeah, gotta make it. It's really fun to be a part of the creative community in Los Angeles. And I mean, I grew up in LA, or I grew up in the suburbs of LA, and just went to USC and UCLA. So I think when I was much, much younger, we didn't have really these spaces, but you see all these folks, all these creatives getting together now, and there's all these, I don't know, brunches and happy hours. And more than that, you see people actually like sitting down together and like brainstorming ideas together. And that's been so fun to be a part of, I gotta say. I mean, this panel speaks to it because I feel Pia and I worked on a Daisy Vote video like 12 years ago now. Lena I've known for many, many years through friends. Fozzie and I met at the White House, which I can't stop saying. Shilpi, I've been watching. I didn't know you were part of Brown Girls. That's so exciting. So I'm so glad that got picked up by Freeform. I love rom-coms. Anyone who knows me knows that I love rom-coms. So Shilpi, your piece really like touched me because I was like, yes, I love having brown girls leading their own rom-com story. How did it come about? And I also want to say, like, your piece, you work with Kieran Deal, who is great. I've seen her. She was just on that TV show with Cal Penn for one season. And before that, I feel like I've just watched her on screen for many, many years. So what was that project like to work with Kieran? How did you find her? How did you decide to, do this really? I mean, what I loved about your piece was you do a very classic narrative, but then you have this like Daisy twist on it, which was just wonderful. So how did you come about landing on that story, and how did you find Kieran to do it?
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, by the way. I mean, the story came about, I guess, because my husband is a white man. And I just remember, like, at one point when we were dating, I had to really stop and ask myself, like, do I want to deal with being with a white guy, right? Like, coming from a traditional Indian background, I was like, and not only is he white, he's like white from Wisconsin, right? It's not like he is like, grew up in California or something, right? So like, he's like really, really white. And I was like, there's probably going to be like some issues. Like, so far there hadn't been any issues, but I was like, it's going to happen at some point. And like, how do I feel about that? And the thing is, I stopped and asked myself, then I very quickly was like, it doesn't matter. It's worth it. Like, I love him. But I feel like a lot of people maybe never even stop and ask themselves that question if they're in some kind of interracial relationship, right? And so that's really what inspired the movie, when maybe you're in a relationship for the wrong reasons, you don't know. And by the way, nothing that happened in the movie like happened in my relationship with my husband. Like, it was all fictionalized, but I feel like I've heard a million stories of things like that happening, right? And then Kieran, I mean, honestly, Kieran came in and auditioned, like, and I was surprised that she auditioned, because I was like, oh, Kieran is like kind of a big deal. Like, she's clearly very talented, on her way up in the world. And I realized at some point that we were both at WME, like we were at the same agency. So I was like, maybe that's why. I actually never really even asked her why she auditioned. Maybe I should probably text her and like be like, why did you come in? But yeah, so she came in on an audition and really just kind of, was obviously the best person for the role, because it was very nuanced. And I was worried about finding, the right actor who could pull off nuance in a rom-com. It's like you need a very specific blend of funny and yet like this kind of pain that can come through. But I think she did it really well. So I'm very happy with it.
Her comedic timing is stellar, especially in just like how she was able to just promote so much in just a look. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is so funny, and I don't even know why I'm laughing. Cool. Well, it was a lot of fun. I can't wait to see. I think I'm the kind of person that loves Hallmark movies. So the feelings I got were very Hallmarky. I mean, not as an insult, but as a good way. Good for someone who loves that genre. So it just was really tender to see. Okay, so my next question is for all of y'all. Oh, baby. On the screen, I'm looking at Pia's baby. I'm saying I don't know what the baby's name is.
It's Nico.
So
You have to have a name apparently when you have a baby in the hospital. So for the birth certificate, and I was not prepared, but we were like, screw it. His name's Nico and his middle name is Zuma, after a Neil Young album. And I'm going to be passing him off soon. But that was a real real pregnancy, not a baby bump. It never even occurred to me until Fazia or someone said, like, was that real? I was like, whoa. Like, yes. And on that day, I was looking in the mirror and I actually saw stretch marks that I had never seen before because I had never been in that lighting at that time of day. And I had like a mini freak out right before we shot that scene. I was like, oh shit, this is real. Anyway, yeah. Say hi, Nico.
I just want to say I want to say I've never heard anyone say in terms of how they named their baby, like, hey, fuck it.
Fuck it. Nico Zuma has a nice ring to it.
I was going to say, one.
What's in the name? Rose by any other name would smell as good. I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay, my next question is for all of y'all. I think one of the things that we've been seeing a lot lately, or at least my consumption of media lately, is that we're seeing South Asian men getting a lot of mainstream spotlighting. We have Hassan Minaj, Aziz Ansari had Master of None, and everyone's talking about like how there's a South Asian entertainment surge, but we're really not seeing that much shine being put on South Asian women. And as South Asian women creators and directors and writers, like how I don't know how to phrase this, but how do you feel about that kind of messaging that's going on, and how do you counter that? How do we, like, what do we, I don't even want to say like what do South Asian women have to do to get better awareness, because I think that's not the issue. I think we are battling systems that are trying to just only bring men up and not bring women up. So I do think a lot of that has to do with us creating a community of South Asian women entertainment creatives and pulling each other up while we go up. But I wanted to see how you all felt about that and pushing your media in that kind of environment.
I mean, I think it's gotten better. You know, for a while I felt like I've been making films for a while, and I remember when I made my first feature, Raspberry Magic, with an Indian family and a young girl, like 11-year-old girl in it. I mean, I played in like a ton of festivals, and it got distribution on Stars and it got distribution on Hulu, but like agents and managers wouldn't even talk. I mean, I wasn't like nobody wanted to talk to me. It was like, oh, and I remember meeting with a TV exec who was like, oh, you know, that's nice that it's a South Asian family, but that just doesn't work for us, you know? And so for a long time, it didn't translate for me at all. But, you know, as a female filmmaker, I think obviously there's a lot of momentum right now around women. And what's really hard is like everyone wants that woman of color, you know, to be in their room or on their set, and that really bothers me, because it's like, you know, I've worked really hard to get here, and I don't want to just be thought of as that woman of color. I want to be thought of as an accomplished filmmaker, just like anybody else, you know? And I think it's really challenging because there's a lot of established folks who've been doing things for a long time and have a certain amount of visibility. And I think to bring other voices into the conversation would be really nice. You know, that's where I feel things could improve a little bit, you know? So yeah, other voices, other points of views, other perspectives, just opening it up in terms of brown women, you know? So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I would say that, you know, I've sold 2 projects now, and they've both basically starred South Asian women. And so like everyone is much more open to that than they were even just 5 years ago. However, there's still kind of the hurdle of like, now everyone's willing to listen to you and really give you a serious consideration. But to get it on the air it's like that one last step that I think there's still a lot of fear around that. So like, yes, if you're Mindy Kaling, you can get it on the air. But if it's somebody else, like really any one of us, there's still a lot of fear involved. I mean, the industry is fear-based. And so like what we really need to do is show people like, look, don't be afraid of us. Like people love us. They're gonna love watching us in our stories. and let me prove it to you. Just put me on the air.
Well, and I think that touches on a really important point, is that it's an industry, you know, that's fear-based, and it's also dollar-based, right? Like it's an industry based on capitalism. And so, you know, we are a huge body of people. And I say we, encompassing the entire like diaspora, the subcontinent. Like this is a huge number of people who are a market, a buying power, a voice. And so I think like things that an average person can do who's not in the industry is show up. And that even means on the internet, and showing up to Zoom panels, and showing up, buying a ticket, supporting art, supporting artists, not when it's just like the big thing, but like local artists and at all levels, to show that we as a community have a voice and a buying power. That matters to gatekeepers. Obviously, we want to become the gatekeepers as well, right? Like we want to be the creators, but we also want to be the buyers. So, you know, in that respect, it's like, well, you know, hey, you know what? Maybe you get that job at the bank. Also, maybe you get that job at Warner Brothers. Like that's like another thing. Like let's push our folks into becoming the buyers and the presidents of and executives at these companies and decision-making places. And, you know, to come to the question of like, yes, I mean, I'm excited for all these men to have these jobs. And also like, I think we should all have those jobs too. And, you know, it's not just one woman. It's not just one brown person. It's not just like, we have so many stories, and that's because brown people are not a monolith. And Asian people are not a monolith. And so, you know, I think the more we talk about that and break that out and parse that out, the more conversations that sparks as well.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think that, you know, I was thinking about what this moment was for the shower, for the film that we were making. And, you know, my manager brought up a good point, which is that a lot of friendships go through this moment and we sweep it under the rug because it's really taboo to talk about it with each other if you're not feeling anything other than utter, you know, adulation for whatever choice your friend has made. And men go through it too, but it's like the women are the ones who are always having to parse that experience, try to figure out what it means to them, and then it gets weirdly categorized into this women's thing or this brown person's thing. I mean, we're all people with experiences that are so unique to us, you know. And with women and having kids, it's like whether or not you have a kid, it's an external, ultimately becomes an externalized thing that people can either see or not see, and they don't see the millions of things that have happened to get you there to that step, whether or not you've chosen to be child-free, to go through a million things to have a kid, not have a kid, whatever it is, you're being judged, right? So there's this one experience, like Fazia said, we're not a monolith. This is one tiny experience for one person. Imagine the amount of stories we all have cumulatively in our lives and our experiences that we could be telling. And I think that it's not just South Asian women that want to watch these stories. I think it's everybody. I mean, how have we all grown up watching basically white men be protagonists in these stories and learned how to empathize and somehow like cross that mental barrier of like, oh, I don't look like that person, but yet I can go through that person's journey. And it's the same exact thing. And it's really what we need as a society to heal ourselves, all of us, and especially toxic male culture, if we want to start talking about that. Because if they can see the feminine and whatever you want to call it in themselves, the other, the brown, that's when we can all really start to understand that a protagonist is someone that you see yourself in, no matter what they look like. And I think that's happening more and more, but I do hear your question, and I think it is just indicative of the larger structure of our industry, which is that historically men have had the interesting roles, period. I mean, even as recent as, what was that, Breaking Bad, where the woman got vilified to the point where she had to write an op-ed in the New York Times about her character. Like, the misogyny in our culture is so rampant, but I think the only way is to keep making our stories and keep selling them. So hats off to you guys. You guys inspire me like no other, and I just want to keep writing and keep making more stuff.
I've been thinking a lot about this whole conversation is reminding me of all the critique that's been going on around Never Have I Ever, Mindy's show that came out last week, and how both so many people love it, and then there's so much critique of it being politically incorrect. I'll just leave it there. And I think one of the things that I keep really thinking about is just how if Mindy's, like, if you only have one person expressing their voice, then it's easy to critique. But if we had more stories getting out there, then it would be a more equitable and more, it's important to have multiple stories out there. And it's really easy for critique to quickly turn into call out culture and to pull down creators, when really what we should be doing is lifting up as many stories to be out there as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's the struggle of singularity, right? It's like, then you are the one who represents them all and us all, and that's not really possible. It happens in in the Muslim community with Rami's show. Like, how can Rami's show represent 1.8 billion Muslim people in the world? That's just not possible, nor should it be. Or, I think Lena Waithe, as a queer Black woman, experiences that, where it's like, well, this is the person. There's only one who can represent everyone, and that's just not. It's not possible to live up to that kind of standard. And so, basically, I think the message is, we all need shows.
We all need shows. We all need to be showrunners of our own thing. For people who are joining us, we are taking questions from the audience. There is one question that I'm going to read. This is from Nirav Bhakta. What is the one thing you all learned about yourself through the making of your films? And thank you all for being yourselves and creating content that reflects your individual identities and experiences. Does anyone want to take it?
I guess with every project, I always try new things, and I push myself to explore things in different ways. And I mean, this is kind of like, I use a lot of moving camera in my work. I mean, I love just mounting on steady cams and other kind of toys, but for this I went with a much more kind of clean, kind of classic look with dollies and more kind of shots that are steady and not moving all the time. And I actually learned that I really enjoyed doing that. It's like a really random thing to learn, but it's like, it was fun, and I really, really appreciated doing that. And it's a tough topic to broach, and I think because it's a family thing going on in my family, I think that the conversation around the piece is a little bit challenging. So I mean, I learned that like my previous feature was on a really sensitive subject matter too, but it's like, yeah, it's hard to talk about, but there are certain conversations that emerge when you do make difficult material. And it's a little bit shocking about how, like, even the conversation I was having with my husband last night, like, he did watch the film, but there was something really painful in it for him, and he didn't say much about it, but we were having a conversation about it yesterday, and the film wasn't meant to be a reflection of him or me necessarily. It was a feeling that I had, and I think it's like a deeper feeling that we might all have is it's like when life happens, you're like working and creating and making things, and here you are trying to survive and like care about your parents or your children or the things around you, but the train is just moving way too fast. And I think that's conveyed in the movie a little bit. And I don't know, maybe this time of COVID-19 has made us all kind of stop and just reflect and connect and realize that we're all here for each other. So that's been kind of nice.
Yeah, I can tell you a story actually about Stalled. It was literally written 10 years before it was made. And it was supposed to be my thesis film when I was at USC in the MFA program. And what happened was, when you're in that program, part of what you do is you take a class where you like rewrite your thesis film for a semester. And I had taken that film into the class, and I had a female professor who basically just hated the movie. She hated the character. She didn't understand why anybody did what they did. And you know, I rewrite based on her notes, and it was just very clear that she never was on board with my story. And so I really, you know, doubted myself. And when it came to make my thesis film, I completely threw out the script. I wrote something different, and I shot that. And it was literally 10 years later that I came back, and I was like, well, I mean, I know this is a horrible script, but maybe there's something worth saving in here. And then I read it, and I was like, wait, I think this is pretty good. Like, what was her problem? Like, this works for me. And so I ended up making it 10 years later through the AFI directing workshop for women. And I mean, the irony here is, like, it's obviously a much better film for me having made it 10 years later. Like, I had 10 years worth of directing experience, and I was able to get much better actors than I would have as a film student. But what I really, really learned was, like, I shouldn't have doubted myself, you know? And so I asked myself, like, what happened? And it's like, I was young and I was new, and I came to film from like a complete, like, made like a left turn to come into film. So I had no confidence in my abilities or talents at all at that time. And I let this woman, you know, get into my head. And so what I've learned is, like, don't let people get in your head. If you want to do something, if you believe in it, even if later on you realize you made some mistakes, it just own them, right? They're your mistakes, you'll learn from them. And more likely than not, you will succeed.
A lovely, lovely narrative.
I'd say the thing I learned about myself making this was that if it's 100 degrees outside and you need someone to tell someone to turn off their air conditioner where their 4-year-old is sleeping in that room because you only have an hour left to get your shot, and their AC is too loud, I will apparently do it. And I was mortified when I had to do it. And I was like, I'm not a producer. I'm an actor. I mean, I went to school for theater. Empathy, it's this baby. And they're like, Pia, you need to fucking go in there and tell her to turn off her air conditioner for 1 hour. And I did it. And it was not a big deal. And it was kind of like amazing. And it was like this drug. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to produce the shit out of a lot of other people's stories after this. And I realized, like, I've known for a long time that I'm just an actor. I love acting. I love it. I cannot express how much I love it. But really, like, I love collaborating, and I don't want to be sitting in some stinky trailer, like, just being like, man, is this it? Like, I want to be in the mix, and I want to be, you know, doing that organic thing and getting my hands dirty and collaborating with people and letting them, you know, project their own things on whatever the story is, and seeing what that morphs into. And that was what I really learned, was that that people are willing to collaborate. They're willing to get together and make something amazing at the very 11th hour. And then, like, a month, you can just make something that didn't exist in the world before, and now will always be there. So it emboldened me. I know emboldened other actors who saw it and were like, Pia's doing that? Like, oh, okay. Like, maybe I can too, you know, because we have to create our own stories. And it's one thing to, like, know it, and it's another thing to do it. And this was my first time doing it, and it was thrilling. And I feel scared because I know I can never stop now.
I can't believe you did that all 8.5 months pregnant, honestly.
No, I can't either. And I had amazing friends. My friend Kritzia would come in with ice packs. It was so hot. I cannot tell you how hot it was. And I would, if I had even a few minutes, would go and, like, sit down. I couldn't breathe. I mean, watching that thing now is traumatic. So I'm like, who is that person? What was happening with that person? I mean, I could not walk without, like, panting. Being pregnant was just insane. The whole time I was like, I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this again. Like, is it too late to end this pregnancy? The whole, like, seriously, like, I was like, this is I was wondering, I'm curious. I'm a curious person. I want to know what it's like. I got a taste of it, and I'm like, not for me. And then part of me knew too, once the baby came, I was just going to be like, oh my God, I love this baby. So oh my God, 8.5 pregnant. Oh God, guys, I'm so traumatized still by the whole thing. I cannot explain it to you. But my friends were amazing. And we shot it in one day, and they showed up in the morning, they dressed the whole place, and Mahesh was an amazing director because he understood that I was not even myself, like that I was, I mean, it was like an out-of-body experience to be writing, producing, and acting in the heat at 8.5 months pregnant. It was insane, but it was like the most amazing thing. And now that film exists forever, and I can show it to that kid and be like, look.
I want you to know that I do the same thing, but just to my partner. Look at what I did while you were over there.
Yes.
Azia, what did you learn from about yourself through making
film? For me, it was exciting because it's the first project that I've made that I solo directed. So it was, I made a bunch of other things, but this was a first, and it was great. I mean, it was a beautiful kind of leap of faith for both myself, for an idea, for executing it, for having a small team, assembling them, and just us doing it, and then, kind of being in and out of it, and having a vision that, and I think especially comedically, having a vision, because, it's a, some people have seen it, some people haven't. It's a 3-minute short. And I had this bit that I had thought of that I wanted to execute, and to see that bit get executed in the way I wanted, it was really inspiring to me, both comedically and sort of to want to direct more. And so I'm definitely kind of going down a path of directing more. And, I had a feature that I was like, oh, someone else should direct this. And now I'm like, I think this is so personal, I should direct this. And I just didn't think about that in that way previously. So, I think, there's a lot of excitement about the future. I mean, I'm not the person who's like, I should direct everything I write. Like, that's definitely not me. But I think now I have this, it was the beginning of an awareness of, there's some of my work that I will want to direct.
We're still accepting questions. There's no other questions coming in. I do have one more question. I have 2 more questions. If no one else comes in. I wanted to ask about on the internet, on the Twitters this week, there is a video of a woman on some TV show that I'll leave unnamed because I mainly forgot it. But she wears hijab, and her hijab comes off, and it's like these cascading curls down her face, and it's just gorgeous hair, and like all these men come to be her savior and like protect her while she covers her head up. I was tweeting about how this is what happens when men direct and men write, and men have the male gaze on women. That's what happens. So I've been thinking a lot about the female gaze, and I was thinking about that while I was watching all of your pieces, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on being a creator with the female gaze. Like, I think also before the pandemic started, the last movie I saw was Harley Quinn in the theaters, and everyone kept talking about the rubber band being handed in the middle of a fight scene and how that was a female gaze thing. So I think that's what I went into watching your films with that eye, and I was wondering if you could speak on what it means to be a filmmaker, writing and creating for the female gaze.
Well, I mean, I think that it's interesting because I think there's this idea that like somehow, I think there's a certain consciousness that goes into making something when you are a woman writer and creator. I wasn't even aware of that as I started out as a young as a young filmmaker, as a young writer. Like, I remember the first time I sent my script out to someone and a manager said to me, you know, this has a woman lead in it. That means it can't sell. It can't be, you know, a sellable, marketable property. And I thought, what? I never even considered that before. That was such a strange thing to me, you know, like, what? And so I think just the consciousness of how women, what projects we choose to make and why we choose to make them. And I think right now there's a really nice renaissance of projects where you do see things from the female point of view, you know, like Little Fires Everywhere. I was watching the series, I'd read the book, and I thought, you know, this is nice. It's done by female directors. You can kind of see there's a stamp of like this kind of understanding of, you know, these complicated female friendships. And I thought the acting in it was so well done. So I think we're seeing the rise of more voices of female creators, even in Never Have I Ever. I love the fact that, you know, it's a mother, a daughter, and a niece in there. You know, I think it brings this really nice kind of relationship that we probably wouldn't have seen on the screen 5 years ago. And I think that's because there's 2 female creators behind that. So I think the consciousness of that is really just emerging now, to be honest, and in Hollywood. And so I think I look forward to seeing how it grows and even more.
I feel like my favorite reference for female gaze is Blue is the Warmest Color. And there's, you know, it's this great film, and it's, you know, there's a lot of beautiful things about it, and everyone's like, oh my God, this lesbian film. And the scene that I was like, this was not made by a woman, was like when the women were scissoring, and you're just kind of like, we don't really do that. I'm sorry, that's not what I would want. No, we don't want to do that right now. That's what are they doing? Why is that? And like, that's just, it's those moments in great film, or those moments in great television, or those moments in bad television or good movie, whatever it is, that remind you of like, this is why it's important to have somebody who like does that thing involved. Like, you know, get a lesbian. Why not? Maybe get a lesbian in there. She'll tell you all about the scissors.
I think the female gaze is really interesting, because I don't think any of us go into our projects and think, okay, so let's make this real female, right? And like everything I envision and write and the characters, like, I gotta be real female about this. Like, we're just doing what we think the story needs, right? And it turns into this collective almost conscience of the female gaze, in the same way men never thought to themselves, well, I'm gonna make this real male. Right? Like they didn't, but it was mostly men creating all the content, and therefore the male gaze kind of came about. And, you know, I can't tell you how many times in the past 10 years, I would be watching something, and just like Fazia is saying, like, okay, this is good. And then you go, oh, this was written by a man, because you see something that obviously no woman would ever put in. And so I think the female gaze is just great. It's great that we have a gaze, you know, that there is something so unconscious, and yet we all share. And also we're not thinking about it like in the moment as we're creating. And I really look forward to how this starts to change, you know, the projects we see coming forth, and the film and the TV that we're seeing, and, you know, how it can hopefully reshape a lot of the narratives that we're seeing to be a little more balanced.
Yeah, and when you see something shown to you over and over and over a lifetime on a screen, you know, it's about reclaiming, I think, that point of view. So you're reclaiming that point of view, and it's just bringing it back and shifting it over here. Like Blue is the Warmest Color is an amazing example, because did you see Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
Did I see Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
And,
no, yes, of course, yeah.
You know, I mean, you've got that one scene with the armpit and the whatever the fuck they were on, and
it was the hottest thing in the world. I didn't even know, and then I was like, yes, that is someone who knows my needs.
It was, yeah, and it was incredible. And that film, every shot, every moment, it's beyond. That's the kind of movie where I'm like, you know what, I'll just quit. And also, I can never quit. Also, I'm just going to quit, because it's just, you know, and only a woman, and I believe she's a lesbian, could have made that film in that way. And both those actresses, I mean, and the third actress, my God, and the abortion scene with the baby next to I mean, if you have not seen this movie, guys, go see it. It's on Netflix or Hulu or one of those right now. It is incredible. And that is a prime example of reclaiming a point of view. So I really think, you know, the female gaze, it's a gaze, it's ours, it's the one that we were born with. And it's, I hate to put these terms on things, female gaze, person of color. What the fuck does that mean? Like, last time I checked, white was a color. Like, I don't know, like, when I don't know how to talk about this stuff if we don't do it, if we don't label it somehow. But you know, like Shelby was saying, like, I don't go into it thinking like, let me look at the opposite of the male gaze, which is, I guess, maybe the female gaze. And no, it's just the way you want to tell a story. And there are so many different ways to see the world, and everyone's perspective is obviously different. But I guess, yeah, the male gaze. I mean, I read this thing in the New York Times recently. There were, I think it was Eliza Hittman or one of the films that came out, and she teaches film, and she was saying she sees these students coming in over and over. The shot goes from the woman's face, pans down for no apparent reason, and then stops right about here, and then comes back up. And she's like, why did you shoot this in this particular way? And they're just like a deer in headlights. Like, I don't know, maybe because I've seen it a million times before, and I thought that's how you make a movie. And these are women filmmakers coming in with this shot. So, yeah.
Change the paradigm and change how our stories are told, and how what is considered normal now. We need that's what I feel like all your shorts have done today and this week while we all watched it. It just really it unconsciously forces people to change how we see the world, and that's what's so great about art and filmmaking, is that that's what it does. And we're at the end of our time, but before we go, just really quickly, what's next? I know it's hard to think about what's next in a pandemic. Maybe you're one of those super productive people in a pandemic, but what is next for you in this moment?
I mean, I'm writing. I'm working on a couple of new indie projects. I was actually shooting a movie for Mar Vista when all this hit. I was in prep on a movie, so I was about to film that, and then it stopped. So hopefully that can pick up once this gets a little better. And yeah, I have a couple of projects I wanna make. So just working toward those.
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing a pilot for Disney Channel, so for kids, you know, because like I think we all know, it's like the kids are the ones who really need the representation, right? It's like when you're watching content when you're a kid and you see yourself, it can completely change the way you decide to live your life. And so, yeah, I'm in the middle of writing that, and, you know, like, who knows? I have no idea what's going to happen, but hopefully it can maybe get on the air at some point. And obviously working on a bunch of different things, just like we all do.
I am working on a feature. I've got a couple of screenplays and a couple different ideas, and now, you know, with the way things are in the world, obviously there's so much opportunity, but there's also a whole different way that we're going to have to go about doing it for a little while. So that's the writer part of me, and we actually shot this as a proof of concept for a feature, and then I'm just going to continue auditioning and see what happens with that whole world, and get my self-tape game back into action at home with the baby, which should be fun.
I don't have to worry about my baby, human baby, that is. My babies are constantly being born. They're made of paper. I'm working on a couple features, doing a table read of one in a little bit, and writing a pilot that I sold to Stage 13, you know, in a second draft of that, pitching a show via Zoom now, half-hour comedy, and writing a lot. I applied to 2 grants today. Taz knows I was like, girl, I got a deadline. I gotta go. And honestly, like I love writing. I mean, I think that's something that's become really apparent for me is I love writing and writing roles for people. Like it is so fun. Granted, I will be in your movie if you want me to be, but you know, I'm really enjoying being in a space of writing roles that I would play, but like casting someone else in it. So that's really exciting. And amplifying other folks too. So love being here, getting to like watch all your movies. That was really fun to do today. And man, more gazes.
Well, it was a lot of fun to be socially distancing with all of you. I can't wait to give you all hugs in person. That's all the time we have today. Thank you for sharing. Be sure to check out Cinema Sala presented Amped Up Shorts program. Watch those films now before tomorrow's night's Q&A. And for more information on visual communication, please check out the website vcmedia.org. Thank you, Visual Communications, for creating this platform for South Asian women to discuss.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ah!